Well, good afternoon, all. Recollecting my time in Libya has been really kind of fun. It's been almost 50 years since I was there. But I remember one thing that everybody enjoyed that worked there. If my recollection holds, we worked 3 weeks out in the desert, came back into Benghazi, we had a week off, which was really delightful. Many of those weeks were spent traveling. Most of the guys that worked out in the desert, particularly if they were single, took off for someplace when they got back to their home base. I made trips to Spain, Greece, but one of the trips that I made that was really interesting was Egypt. Actually, I had asked the employer that I ended up with if I could go to Egypt. That was my first choice. And they said, well, actually you can't because there's no opening there. But we can send you to Libya, which is right next door. And I thought, okay, I'll take that. So Egypt was always on my mind. At that point, I wasn't that interested in historic detail, but there was something fascinating about the pyramids in Egypt and the few things I knew about Egyptian history. So that was always on my mind for a week off. Well, that finally came. I went to Cairo and actually had quite an experience there. I didn't get much beyond Cairo, Memphis, and Alexandria. There was just too much to see. I regret that I didn't go down the Nile, actually up the Nile, to visit some of the shrines that are so well known. I really regret that. But what I saw in the area around Cairo was really interesting. One of the things that was just absolutely fascinating to me was to visit the Great Pyramid at Giza, Cheops. What was so fascinating about it is to actually experience it. It is a giant monument to a man's desiring immortality. The Pharaoh wanted to leave his name, and he wanted to live forever. An interesting concept, life after death. Actually, the pharaohs not only wanted their name memorialized, but their tombs were prepared with furniture, boats, chariots, food, animals, and so on that would be there for them in their afterlife. Interesting concept. But the Great Pyramid at Cheops, when I arrived there, a guide told us that there used to be, though they stopped it, people who would come to the Great Pyramid and they would race to the top. It would kind of like being a 5K race or something, except this was going up the face of the pyramid. Each level of the pyramid could be 6 feet high, maybe more. So it was like jumping from one ledge to the next. Apparently, it was really a lot of fun. And I thought to myself, I was in my mid-20s, I thought, man, if they were still doing that, I would like to have tried it. But they weren't doing it, so I didn't get a chance to try it. But we were able to go inside the pyramid, and you entered through a large channel. It was upward sloping. It was like a tunnel that went up to the burial chambers. And there were steps. Along the way, the height of that tunnel, so to speak, I don't remember exactly how high it was, but it could have been 12 to 15 feet, and it was extremely broad. I guess it had to be big enough for them to bring in all the furnishings that would be used for the tomb site. But going up these steps and looking at the rocks on either side was unbelievable. They were all hand-cut. They were huge. The one thing that fascinated me was they didn't have mechanical equipment like we do to cut stone, but when you looked at the joints, which were not mortared, the rocks were pushed together so close and so tightly and so finely finished on their surfaces, you couldn't have gotten a piece of paper in between them. All that was done by hand. It's an amazing feat. especially when you consider how big those stones were. But you go up inside, and then you went into the burial chambers. There was nothing there. There was no sarcophagus that I remember. Most of it had been stolen by tomb raiders way back, centuries before. But it was just a phenomenal feat for them to have built those pyramids. One of the things that really grabbed me was we have a concept that we used to be cavemen, right? We were monkeys, then we were cavemen, and then we became modern man with technology and so on. But I started thinking about this. These guys weren't cavemen that built these pyramids. These people were highly technical. Now, they didn't have all the technology we do. They didn't have all the equipment we do. But they were really an advanced people. But what I've learned since is they're not the only ones. Man has been perhaps deluded into thinking we've progressed, meaning that in the past we didn't have technological knowledge. But when you look at the archaeology around the world, it's amazing what they accomplished. So actually, we have improved our technology through the years, but to say that we're smarter now than they were then would be in great error. And you see that clearly when you visit the pyramids. One of the other fun things, of course, was you go for a camel ride if you wish, and you can ride around the various pyramids at that location. That was really kind of interesting and convinced me. I was glad that I didn't have to travel on a camel very far. It's a very active ride, bouncing and moving about, but it was fun. One of the other things that was of interest was the fact that the Egyptians had built mastabas, which was a name for a tomb site, a pyramid, and the step pyramids were the first ones. They weren't smooth-faced like Giza. They were stepped, so you could see each layer of rock that was put into them. It turns out that the Great Pyramid had been faced with beautiful limestone so that it was smooth. You wouldn't have seen the layers of rock in it. All that limestone had been stolen through the years and used by other people for other purposes. But one of the interesting ones was the Tomb of Tai. And really what it was kind of out in the sand by some rock structures that had been carved. And it was a set of steps that just went down into the desert, so to speak. But going down in there was a tomb site for a character by the name of Tai. He was an Egyptian leader. But this went way down into the ground. And of course, everything was gone. The tomb raiders had taken everything. But it was just interesting to see what these people from ages past were able to produce and the quality of work that they gave to it. I went to Memphis, where there's a huge monument for Ramses II. It looked like an obelisk, except it was the statue, a figure of Ramses himself. It was huge. This one at Memphis was not vertical. It was lying flat, prone, on a base. But that was stunningly interesting. Alexandria was really neat to see this city that Alexander himself had laid out and planned. My only regret about all of this was that now I'm interested in history. At that time, I wasn't. I didn't have a studied interest. So what is the lesson from all this? Well, if you really want to enjoy those kinds of travels, it's good to do some study. It's really good. And to not do that is to miss some of the most important aspects of the whole adventure. So Egypt was really a fun experience for me. And again, I wish I'd gone up the Nile to Abu Simbel and some of those sites. Thank you.